program do not necessarily reflect those of the Way Broadcasting Corporation or the staff and management of WFBR.
Great afternoon to you. That's right, legalize it. You heard him say it. Peter Tosh, legalize it. You're officially tuned into KannaBiz, discussing the business of the cannabis industry. And I'm your hostess for the hour, Colette Ramsey. Such a pleasure to be here on this Thursday. It is the 28th of May. The month is almost over. And we are here. We're moving positively, progressively forward. So happy to be with you this afternoon. And just, you know what? We're on Famous. That's where we are. On Famous, WFBR 1590 AM. And I would be remiss. I have to start off. I have the pleasure, thank you for the opportunity through Little Africa to be introduced into this airwaves. But I have the pleasure to be able to introduce a format and a conversation the way that I see best fit. In the midst of a country and nation right now that is in perpetual trauma, in turmoil, in pandemic, in crisis, a lot of you all will say, well, Colette, I believe that we live in that every day. People who are disenfranchised, disadvantaged, and whatever the case may be. And I believe that in the wake of what has consistently happened around this nation of ours, and specifically in light of Mr. George Floyd, his family, his loved ones, his friends, and all of us who mourn and grieve for him, I would take a minute. I would ask to give a few seconds to be in honorance of observance of his life, of his spirit, of his legacy, and all of those who we've lost prior, and sadly enough, those to come. And I would implore us as we begin this conversation today, I know a lot of people there saw some looting and some rioting and some calls to arms on social media. And I guess now it's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth and those things. And I get it. I was as emotional, I believe, as the next person on over the last couple of days. But in the conversation today, I'm going to ask you to take a different perspective, and a perspective that they wouldn't allow you to even process. And I said they wouldn't allow you because we weren't programmed to think that way. When I said we, I mean the masses of people who are coming up out of slavery, who are coming out of being the original and indigenous people to this land of ours, and then were put up under a servitude by this governance that has created America. And so I would ask us to have a mindset of empowerment. And how do you empower? You empower through wealth. You empower through understanding a system to understand then how to make the system work for you. And so what we're going to implore on today is an ideology in which I'm going to ask you to think. And a lot of us believe that because we've heard words and we've heard of phrases and we have this information and we've been told certain things that we have an aptitude to be able to process and that we get it. And a lot of times we believe that we can then jump in and do these things and be successful at it. But time and time again, as this essential industry has shown us, as cannabis has shown us, we are still fearful. And I'm here today to let you know the topic that we are going to engage in will allow you to get your foot in the door and learn how to make America work for you. When you have wealth, you learn how to make it work for you. You go by the beat of your own drum. You create a pattern and a schematic that changes what your narrative looks like in this paradigm. And so I'm going to ask us, in the midst of all of our angst, in the midst of all of our emotionalism, in the midst of who we are, in this present state in time, I'm asking on today to think a little bit out of the box. As we're discussing stock, Cannabis Stock 101, does risk yield wealth? And so at the end of the day, I'm imploring us because we risk every other aspect of our lives on a day-to-day basis. We risk our freedoms. We risk our minds, our mental health, our stability. We risk the nurturing and nature of our families and our unions. We risk all of that. We give all of that. We throw all the cautions to the wind and all those things that I believe are so essential in allowing us to be healthy, whole individuals, to actually really be able to create a free mindset. We risk those things. We throw caution to the winds for those things. But what is most important is that mind and the brain and how we process and creating and shaping our own narrative and understanding the real system and knowing how to make it work for you outside of this 9 to 5. So I want to give a great thank you again to the sponsors and my partners of Little Africa, Beyond Image Graphics, Downtown Cultural Arts Center. I love them. Can't wait till we have events there. Keep It Hemple, Thunder Distribution, Miss Deb Holcomb, and the Oxygen CBD brand. Speak Rock Enterprises, American Teas Unlimited, and specifically for this segment, KannaBiz Investment Club. And I know that you want to be a part of the conversation on today. You're going to want that. So let me give you our call-in number. It's area code 410-761-1592. Again, area code 410-761-1592. And let me give a disclaimer. I'm going to say that. The station normally gives a disclaimer, but I'm going to open up with a disclaimer and let you know that I am not a stockbroker, an analyst, or a financial advisor. I am merely a student of knowledge and practical application of knowledge, and also the founder of KannaBiz Investment Club. So our opening quote is, "An investment in knowledge always pays the best interest." Let me give that to you one more again. An investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. And that was a quote from Benjamin Franklin. Knowledge. And a lot of you all believe that knowledge is power, but I would implore you to say that applied knowledge is power. And so you gonna learn today. I know a lot of you, and I know you have your pens and paper ready, because I'm going to give you some stocks and some names, and we're going to give a current market analysis as it looks like for these stocks. And then we're going to delve into what I really believe is the root and the crux of how this stock market, this stock exchange, this stock index really works. Because I believe that the truth of the matter is the majority of us really don't know. We know, we've heard the words, but we don't really understand the meaning. And a lot of us have been raised to believe that the stock market determines the wealth and the health of the economy. But if indeed that is true, why aren't we a part of it? And a lot of you all might say, well, Colette, no, I'm a part of it in place of employment. I've bought into a 401k, and in understanding what your 401k does, it has the option to invest in a multitude of stock that yield a result and a return for you. Absolutely. And then a lot of you always say, well, Colette, in this time of unemployment and COVID-19, how does unemployment affect the stock market? It absolutely does. If you didn't know, you're going to know. Simply put, when there's a low unemployment rate, that can be an indicator of the economic expansion, while high unemployment can be an indicator of an underperforming economy. So you just think about supply and demand. That's why so many states are working to open back up retail. I note in Baltimore, Mayor Young, under Governor Hogan, has announced that there's some retail establishments that are going to be open on today. Because the truth of the matter is the driving factor is the economy. I'd love for us all to believe that it is really for the health and the well-being of the great citizens of this state and all the states in which you are listening. However, the truth of the matter is that if I don't move the needle and change the pendulum on what this economy looks like, we will come crashing into a depressive state, and they're trying to allow you to believe that that is not the case. However, it's coming. But with that, in great crisis, that's when there's opportunity. And so that's why it's important for us to have the conversations that we have on today. So let me let you know. And this reference for this morning is coming out of Investopedia. They've identified some top marijuana stocks for April 2020. And again, this is just information. It's common knowledge. If you are on KannaBiz.tv, if you go to that website, that's my website, that is the all news video web portal for everything specific to the cannabis industry. And of course, there's some videos specific to stock, the financial format of how the industry is shaping, and you can of course get the visual of it, because I know a lot of us just like to watch. We like to watch. We don't care to read. We want to watch and learn and get information, and that's not a problem. But on today, the top marijuana stocks for April 2020, the overview for you. The marijuana industry is made up of companies, and we've talked about that, and those companies are either support or they're engaged in research, development, distribution, the sale of medical and recreational marijuana. We've discussed those in the past. They are called ancillary businesses that make the actual grow of the product thrive and make the grow successful, whether it is cannabis from a CBD level, the hemp arm, or with the THC level. But we also know that cannabis has begun to gain, a wider acceptance. Anytime you have witnessed in this pandemic that cannabis is deemed an essential business, that means essential medicine, an essential recreational tool, an essential way to allow us to manage our everyday lives. So absolutely, it has gained wider acceptance, and it has been legalized in a growing number of nations, states, and other jurisdictions. Now, we've discussed on the show prior, and so grateful last week we had Rita Clark, and a licensed social work and clinical therapist, as we talked about how to cope and manage with COVID-19. And we know that the pandemic has hurt sales in some states due to social distancing and, of course, store closures. But stock in those sectors have been badly hurt as well over the year. But I'm here to tell you, there's still hope. I know you're writing this down. There's some companies, I'm going to give you a few as this report notes. Canopy Growth Group, Cronus Group, GW Pharmaceuticals. Those are a few, okay? And we know that some of them, as was reported by the numbers, they've underperformed for the broader market. And we're going to get into all of this. I'm just giving you a report. And whether it's a return from the S&P or whatever the index tool is, we'll get into stock index as well, but it's showing that these corporations are really struggling. And the market performance numbers, of course, that I'm going to give today are based on this report that was in the end of April. The stocks that we'll discuss momentarily are going to be based on best value, the fastest sales growth, and those with the most momentum. So let's go. Best value marijuana stocks. So they assess that the best value is identified as with the lowest 12-month trailing price to sale ratio. That's PS. So when you see P/S, it's price to sale. A lot of times for young companies that haven't reached their profitability, this can provide an idea of how much business they're getting for each dollar invested. So the three best value marijuana stocks, as was identified in Investopedia, are Amyris, Aphria, and Aurora Cannabis. Amyris, AMYRIS Inc., it's traded as AMRS on the New York Stock Exchange. It was $2.25 a share. Okay. Apria, APHRIA Inc., it's traded as APHA.TO. It trades at $3. It was trading at $3.03 a share. And then you had Aurora. I know you've all heard about Aurora Cannabis. It's trading as ACB, and it was as low as 69 cents a share. Now, those are best value marijuana stocks. So that means that based on them being young companies, they're just coming out of the gate. They haven't, of course, yet reached the pinnacle of their profitability, and it gives you an opportunity to be able to get in. And I'm sure if I pulled up the New York Stock Exchange right now to be able to give you those numbers, I'm sure the pricing has fluctuated. And in understanding that, I want you to be mindful that any business is based on, the success of the business is based on the structure. It's based on the foundation. It's based on the model in which I identified. Now, you can interchange the CEOs and the CFOs and the COOs, but the structure of the business ensures at least it gives an invitation and the image to who? Regular people like us, citizens who are investing, that believe that you as a company need to be rewarded, because I believe that your structure gives us such. And that's just how you presented it, right? It's no different than what they say, all PR is good PR, whether it's bad or good. It has an impact on what the outcome is. Absolutely. It's the same way in how we assess and look at stock. And I got a caller, Sylvia. Hold on. I'm going to be right with you. I just want to give a quick overview of these stocks, okay? The three that are the best value. So Amyris, now, when we talk about ancillary businesses, diversified entities into the cannabis space, you're going to learn. Because Amyris is a biotech company, and they specialize in engineering yeast to produce different substances such as cannabinoids. So it's an engineering company, and they recently launched a brand of hand sanitizer. Okay? Apriya, it's a Canadian-based company. They are engaged in the production and sale of medical and recreational cannabis. They announced in November the election of several new members of their board of directors and a number of new appointments and promotions to its executive leadership team. And you know why that's important? Because the companies want you to know that their structure is intact. That if indeed they are not finding the right candidate that brings the capital to be able to support their growth and vision as it is on paper, that we will have no problems removing you, because we want to ensure the trust of those who are investing in us. And then we have Aurora Cannabis. You clearly have heard about Aurora. It's been a household name. Aurora Cannabis is a Canadian-based company, and they're engaged in the production, distribution, and sale of cannabis products. They, too, announced in early February that their founder and chief executive officer, Terry Booth, he was going to be retiring, and then he was going to be succeeded by executive chairman Michael Singer as the interim CEO until they were able to find a permanent successor. But either way, at the time of this report, the company had announced that Booth was selling his approximately 12.2 million shares of the company in the open market. Do you get that? And a lot of you always say, well, how do you even have 12.2 million shares of a company? Well, we're going to get there, because there's a difference between a private company and a public company. And most entities are started off private in order to ensure their valuation before they go public. But we're going to get there. Let me go to Miss Sylvia on the line. Great afternoon to you.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
I absolutely can. Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, Miss Sylvia.
Okay, I can hear you. Listen, my laptop, it just froze, so I can't hear everything. Is there phone numbers that you can give me to look up these different stock businesses? I got Aurora, Pira, and I think you said Amyris. I don't know how to spell, so I'm trying to sound it out. So is there any way that I can have a contact or lead my contact so that I can start investigating and doing my research on these structures, stock markets, so that I could be, comfortably investing?
Absolutely. Well, let me just let you know, Miss Sylvia brought it out, put the cat out of the bag. So there's an opportunity for you to be a part of KannaBiz Investment Club. That is what I have founded, and it is an investment club. And so it's a group. So a club is a collective group of individuals who've gotten together to be able to assess what the market looks like. Specifically, this pertains to cannabis. And if you are interested, then the group identifies, I have all the structure, the guidelines, what it looks like, and then you're able to invest monies in, and collectively we invest into what these stocks look like. So absolutely, you can contact me directly at area code 313-422-5751. Again, 313-422-5751. You can email or text or call. And then you can also shoot an email over to me at info@kannabiz.tv. That's info@KannaBiz.tv. And so that can begin our conversations. And of course, I can outline these stocks and a whole lot more stocks, because my portfolio is a little different. Today is an overview of stock overall. And So the companies that I'm presenting today are just that, companies that are based, established, majority in the production of cannabis, either moving into the cannabis space from the engineering, real estate, biotech space. But I got a little different model. And I'll probably bring this back next week, Sylvia, and talk to you about what I suggest, what the stocks that I follow and what that looks like. So, yes, absolutely.
I wrote it down, 313-422-5751.
That's it.
And info@KannaBiz.tz.
Correct. That's it.
Thank you. I got it.
I got you, and I got you.
Love you.
I love you. Love you more. So I appreciate her calling. I hope you all wrote it down, and then if not, I'll make sure I announce it before the end of the show. So those stocks were an overview of what that looks like. Then we're going to move into the fastest growing marijuana stocks. Now, those are stocks that have been identified with the highest year over year. So when you see anything with the stock and it's YOY, that means it's year over year sales for that most recent quarter. So with these stocks I'm about to identify, there's 3 of those, that rising sales for this show that the company's business is growing. And oftentimes, and when you look to put your money any place, that you use their growth, the measure of the growth of young companies, to determine if you believe there's going to be a shot. Remember, because there's a risk in all of this. So you'll get the information right now, and in you trying to forecast what you believe it to be, or being able to do an assessment, or having someone who follows the stock, follows the companies, understands the structure, understands their history, then we can say, well, guess what? Based off these are the fastest growing stocks that, if we paid attention to them, could yield a favorable result, a profitable return. So the 3 companies I'm going to give you, this one is Innovative Industrial Properties. And of course, they're traded as IIPR. And you don't have to worry about if you're not able to write all of this down. I have the information. I'll be able to share it with you. And at the time of this report, they were going at $73.17. That's a nice price per share. Green Thumb Industries, I know you've heard of Green Thumb. They trade as GTII, Roman numeral I's, .CX. They trade at $7.80 at the time of this report. And then we have Tilray. Tilray has been a standard corporate name in the stock space for a while now, Tilray Incorporated, and they are traded under TLRY. And at the time of this report, it was $6.37. Let me tell you a little bit about Innovative Industrial Properties. Now, they are a real estate company, and they engage in the acquisition, the ownership, and the management of industrial properties. Remember, I believe it was Dr. Bell, great afternoon to you, sir. He asked a couple of shows ago, well, can we talk about some of these ancillary businesses? And I told you that if you gave me a moment, I would be able to equate any industry into the cannabis space. So you see right here, Innovative Industrial Properties, they are a real estate company. And they engage in the acquisition, the ownership, and management of industrial properties. And their company's real estate investments consist primarily of properties that are used for the cultivation and production of medical use cannabis. Aha! We then have Green Thumb Industries Incorporated. Green Thumb Industries, and they operate as a pharmaceutical company that manufactures and distributes medical marijuana and cannabis products. Pharmaceutical. So remember, they're getting you on both ends, right? So we have the regular pharmaceutical components that are prescribed through the doctors and what that look like. And then they manufacture and distribute medical marijuana and cannabis products. And then last, for the fastest growing companies, as this report noted, was Tilray. And Tilray is also a pharmaceutical company. But they're a little different. They're focused on the development of cannabis-based medicines, drugs, drops, and oil products. Now, again, this company is headquartered in Canada, but they have clients worldwide. And to support what their structure looks like, they announced in January the appointment of 2 new executives. Get this, former Revlon executive John Levin, who was joining the company as Chief Operations Officer, that's COO, and then former Molson Coors and Pharmaca executive Michael Kretik, and he was joining as CFO. So that goes to the point of how these industries are transferable. Because there never would have been a time that you probably would have imagined that an entity, an individual coming from a makeup industry, cosmetic industry, Revlon, was moving into a cannabis space, nor Molson Coors was moving into a cannabis space. But this is a bright example that if you understand the structure of business, if you're understanding organizational dynamics, supply and demand, the food chain, what valuations look like, that it's transferable. And so why wouldn't they get into the most essential business model going on right now? So those are those three that I want to present in that vein. Now, they're marijuana stocks with the most momentum. Now, these stocks are the highest total return over the last 12 months. And again, I have to always give the disclaimer because it's based off this report from April, okay? And the three stocks that I'm going to give you, even though they had negative total returns over the past year, they're stocks within the marijuana sector whose returns have been the least negative. Did you get that? Let me give it to you one more again. See, the three stocks that I'm about to give you, the three companies that I'm about to identify for you, even though they had below a negative total returns over this last year, they are still stocks within this sector who have been the least negative. So that means the least change in pricing. So they didn't jump from $10 a share down to 60 cents a share. You follow me? So the marijuana stocks with the most momentum, they're identified as Sprott, S-P-R-O-T-T Inc. They trade as S2I, Roman numeral II, period, T-O. They were selling at the time $3.30 a share. And then again, Innovative Industrial Properties, you just heard that name, right? They're on the most momentum space at $73.17. And then there is Cara Therapeutics. They sell as C-A-R-A, forgive me. And they're at the time of this report, $14.10. Let me give you a little bit about those companies as those identified with the most momentum. Sprott, Canadian-based alternative asset management company. So they provide investment management services, including portfolio management, broker-dealer activities, and consulting services to their clients. And those clients, of course, majority of, are in the cannabis industry. They too announced in January that they had completed its acquisition of Tocqueville Asset Management LP Gold Strategies for total consideration of up to $50 million. And this transaction adds approximately $1.8 billion to their total assets under management. So I know you all have heard that term, AUM. That stands for Assets Under Management. Next company, as we heard before, Innovative Industrial Properties. Remember, they're that real estate company that I mentioned to you just a little while ago. And of course, they focused on acquisition, ownership, and management of industrial properties specific to the cultivation and the production of medical use cannabis. So they're on the fast track and most momentum. And then we had Cara Therapeutics, and they are a biotech firm. And they're focused on treating severe itching, right, known as pruritus. And they're also investigating a cannabinoid compound known as CR701 as a possible pain treatment. So now I know that you're all excited about the information that I just shared, and you've probably written down all the names of the companies, and you're probably ready to go to Google and pull up day trading right now because you believe that the sky is the limit as it stands right now. So you had 9 stocks that represented fast growing, value growth, and momentum. And so you're ready to go, right? But are you really ready to go? And I say that because the truth about stock, and this is my opinion, that you have to understand the history, the industry, and the terms, coupled with understanding how businesses grow. What makes them successful. And I'm here to tell you today that businesses are successful primarily because of their organizational structure, their foundation. And so I want us to understand and be successful because we understand the organizational structure and the foundation of this stock market. So those of you, I'm going to ask you to bear with me because if indeed you understand all of this, this is Stock 101, then that means that it'll just further reinforces what you already know. But those who, this is the first time I'm doing a really deep dive. So because I want you to understand the basis of it. Because no matter what, when you understand the foundation, you can make it applicable to any conversation, in any room, in anything because you understand the basis of this thing. And I don't want us to be in a space where you're just throwing out names because it sounds good. So you have great valuations and you understand, you say investing in stock and stock market index and all of those things. But do you even know what those words mean? So let me let you know. Let's go back and move a little bit. So what is investing? And some of you might say, well, Colette, it's where we put our money. Well, the truth of the matter is, it's when you purchase assets that you expect to earn a profit from in the future. It's an investment. And so you could refer, a lot of you, to buying a home or other property that you believe will rise in value. It's not because it's pretty and you make it pretty. Pretty is just a component of you living there, but it's the valuation of the home. Well, they say when you buy real estate, it's location, location, location. You can be the prettiest house on the block, but if the last house in that block only sold for $30,000, your house is going to only sell for $30,000. I don't care how pretty it is. I don't care how much you invested into it and rehabbed it and made it pretty and a new tin roof and all those things. The valuation is based on the market in its entirety. And so if it is a home, it has to have some kind of value outside of what you have put into it. And there are places and times for how those improvements will help you. But for the majority of part, it's as good as the last sale. So if you're referring to a home, investing is going to rise in value, and that refers to buying stocks and bonds as well. Now, there's an entity called ComSec. They're an online broker, and they identify there's several types of investing. Did you know that there are several types of investing that you can choose from? Each one of them, there's distinct characteristics and risks and benefits, of course. So I'm going to give a few of them to you today. So they're growth investments, right? Though these are most suitable for long-term investors that are willing and able to withstand the market ups and downs. Not like right now, I need a return right now, so I'm going to put my money in. For example, if you were looking at Hertz, right? So you might have looked at Hertz. I know you should have known if you were following the news cycle, the financial news, that Hertz filed for bankruptcy. Their stock was 69 cents a share. Normally on the New York Stock Exchange, the criteria is that the stock doesn't go below $1. But when it does, red flags. Okay, we'll get there. But normally for growth investments, it's just a long term. You just want to walk the dog. You don't want to get in, get out long term. And then there's shares. So shares are considered a growth investment as well, and they can help grow the value of your original investment over the medium to long term, right? So, for example, in investment clubs, there's a wonderful young lady who was having a podcast about investing, and she was one of the original team members, employees at Microsoft. So she got her windfall, and she was able to take those monies and set herself up to be able to ensure that she had a return over the long haul. And so you have to know that when you own shares, you may also receive income from those dividends. And that's effectively a portion of the company's profits that are paid out to the shareholders. So that's a way that you can create wealth. And of course, though, you have to understand that the value of those shares may also fall below the price that you pay for them. So that's where it fluctuates. So every day, if you all are into day trading, so you might have a list of stocks that you look at every day. So, of course, I do. I can talk about the ones that I look at every day and say, okay, today you come in the market, it's at $5. And then, so it opened maybe at $5.15. And then, of course, the New York Stock Exchange opens at, 9:30 a.m., closes at 4. And so at 4:30, you check the stock again and say, okay, well, it opened at $5.15, and then it closed at maybe $5.20. And maybe the high throughout that day was $5.86, but it had to balance out. So that's how you have to know it fluctuates. And of course, it can be volatile. And what is it volatile for? It's based on everything that you hear happening in the news. So that's in every aspect out of our lives that we can fluctuate based on the information that we attain. Is that true? It's no different in stock. So based on what's going on, if the president touts that everything is good, the president touted that we're opening back up the nation and things are looking good. And even though in your mind, you're like, okay, this doesn't make sense because I haven't seen a vaccine for Rona. I haven't heard anybody. Now you don't even see the media shaping anyone who now goes to the hospital. Before, it was everyone who transitioned. It was based, they have the COVID-19. You don't hear any of that anymore. You don't even see these big news flashes about what the numbers are. People who are hospitalized, and heaven forbid those who have passed on, because they've shaped the narrative because they want to change the economy. And the prices of things that we invest in are based on what those conversations are. And if you don't have an understanding of the foundation of which they're speaking to, how can you ever be successful? So that was a dynamic about what shares look like. And then, of course, another tool is property. And that's considered as a growth investment because the price of houses and other properties can rise substantially over the medium or long term, as we discussed. And then there's a term called defensive investments. And these are more focused on consistently generating income. So it's income rather than growth. And those are considered the lower risk than growth investments. So there used to be a time, remember back in the day, I don't know if you all watched History Channel or history.com, and they had a segment about the men who built America. And so who was it? I bet you all, you can tell me, like you can guess. Who were the men who built America? Anyone want to take a guess? I know you'll probably think about it in your mind. Yes. So who are they? I'll tell you. John D. Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt, Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, J.P. Morgan. These are individuals, men who rose from obscurity, and in the process, they built modern America. So at a time when they came of age and created companies and brought them online, there were no share opportunities. There wasn't an opportunity for you to create a defensive investment model because they solo owned everything. Did you get it? So how could you not obtain wealth if I'm the one that owns everything? I don't have shareholders. You don't have dividends and ownership in the company. I own everything. So because I own everything, I'm able to amass and create my personal wealth. And so that's how it started. So did you think that those individuals and governance got along? When we talk about what defensive investments look like? No. They didn't care. And if you watch the segment when they were talking about Carnegie and the president at that time, they figured presidents are bought and sold. They bought and sold the offices, kind of like what they're doing today. And so the position was that I own this. I own whatever the legislation I want. I introduce it. I pay you your contribution, and you do what I say, because it's about generating income rather than growth. If I own everything, I don't have to grow my company because it is what it is, because I'm amassing that personal wealth. That's just an example. Are you all with me? I want you to be able to relate into these areas. And then, of course, there is a cash investment, and that's just including your everyday bank account. You get a return off of the monies that you have in a savings or your high interest, of course, your savings account, your term deposits. But those are typically the lowest potential returns of all the investment types. But sadly enough, majority of people of color, that's all we do. We put our money in a bank and a savings, and we get the little 2% a year, if that much, and that's what it is. And then from a religious standpoint, those who are in a church structure and what that is, then they then put those same funds into a bank, and then they get mad when they can't get loans, they can't get line of credits, because you don't understand the structure in which to be able to use it to make the money that you put work for you. There's no way. You just figure medium-sized church, right? It's medium-sized. So you might average $5,000, and I'm just being I'm being a minimalist right now. Just say $5,000 every Sunday that you get, that you know, and the bank knows that you're going to put into their deposits on that Monday to make work for them. And so a lot of these, especially these historic entities, I was having a conversation with a pastor of a historic church, and over 100 years they had been in existence. So you imagine at least 50 of those years you had that type of return. And so you put that into a noted bank, but you weren't able to get a loan. And you weren't astute enough to be able to establish your own credit union, so at least you can know how to make those monies work for you. But that's the business, and that's the foundation. But again, we want to sit and show, stop, and finger pop and not understand the basics and the foundation of things. But not on today. The next item I'm going to introduce to you is called fixed interest. And it's the best known type of fixed interest investments because those are bonds. And that's when essentially governments or companies borrow money from investors and pay them a rate of interest in return. So when you look at municipalities, they function on a bond rating. You've heard of that, right? So those of you who are coming out of Michigan and the whole thing with Jones Day, when they had to restructure the debt because the bond rating of the city had gone down so low because of the alleged, of course, the allegations and what that looked like with the former mayor, Kwame Malik Kilpatrick. And it is my hope, and this is my conversation on these airwaves, that he is released due to this pandemic. But suffice to say, when everything was happening with him, then the bond ratings went down based on the perception of that business was not able to be successful in Detroit. And so then there was an entity, Jones Day, that had to come in to reassess what that looks like. Because if you have a bad bond or low bond rating, you're not able to secure monies to be able to invest in the projects that you have that are supposed to facilitate the growth and the infrastructure of those municipalities. And so a lot of times bonds are considered to be a defensive investment. And that's because they generally offer, again, a lower potential return and the lower levels of risk than shares or property. But they can be sold relatively quickly like cash. And you all need to know that it's important to note that they are not without risk of capital losses as well. We had that experience back in Detroit when in Wayne County they were trying to build a soccer stadium right down by the jail. And so they did all this maneuvering and the like, and it was some $300 million put that was supposed to revamp the structure. And then come to find out they had an offer from one of the developers to make it into a parking structure. And to this day, I believe it still sits there. And so that was a loss because you're looking at $300 million that does not enhance the structure of the community at all to give a return. And so when you understand those components of investing, then you say, well, why do people invest? Well, I would believe that you all invest, and however you identify it is because you want to create some type of wealth. That even the average millionaire has 7 streams of income. We're trying to become millionaires to get to the 7 streams of income. That's why we're having the conversations that we're doing today. And so in most investment vehicles, if there are stocks or certificates of deposit or bonds, they offer returns on your money over the long term. And so when you allow your money to build, you're able to create wealth. And so I hope you all are with me, that we're moving in a great way because I want us to be educated, okay? So let me give you a little bit more information. I think it's important. Do you even know who invented the stock market? Pin drop. In 1602, the Dutch East India Company officially became the world's first publicly traded company when it released shares of the company on the Amsterdam Stock Exchange. Stocks and bonds were issued to investors, and each investor was entitled to a fixed percentage of East India Company's profits. Because the company realized at that time that if I open it up to individuals, I can gain more money and that I can grow more projects and be able to increase our return and then, of course, give dividends. And you say, okay, Colette, well, that happened over in Amsterdam. When did that come to America? Well, it was created in America in 1817 under the New York Stock Exchange. And, of course, you all know that that was a historical pivotal moment in New York, and they began trading the very first day. But did you know that the New York Stock Exchange is owned by Intercontinental Exchange? And so they're an American holding company. So imagine the entity that provides this platform for traders to buy and sell stock from companies known as the New York Stock Exchange is owned by a company. That company is Intercontinental Exchange. And they're actually publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So they're known as ICE, ICE. So can you imagine that you could invest and own a portion of the New York Stock Exchange? Are you excited about that? I'm excited about it. And so as of yesterday, ICE was trading at $92.43 a share. And it was down from, it was a $1.80% change. So you could invest and own a portion of the New York Stock Exchange. But it was established by a group of investors, a group of individuals, and they created what is known as the Buttonwood Agreement. And so they all agreed. There's 24 brokers, and they signed this agreement, and then they set all the dynamics, what the commission would look like, how they would charge the clients, and thus created what we know as what? New York Stock Exchange. And that was back in 1817. So when you look at that, I hope that gives you a little bit of perspective of where we are, how we got to where we are. Because in establishing a foundation and being successful, again, you have to understand who's at play, what the rules of the game are, and how to engage. And then a lot of you all will say, well, Colette, the truth of the matter is, if those are companies, how do politics, how does governance play a part of it? Can the president shut down the stock market? I got a call about that yesterday. Someone asked me, well, can the president shut down the stock market? Well, the president has the power to shutter the markets in response to the crisis, like COVID-19. So, of course, the markets have been closed many times. And you all know due to war or victory or deaths of presidents or celebrations of historical events of significance, like when we landed on the moon, or disasters, are both natural and man-made, but it has an impact on economy. It has an impact on what we believe as investors, as citizens, what the reward should be for the companies that provide the goods and services. Now, we had discussed a little bit of time before, because a lot of you all were probably confused when we were talking about private companies versus public companies. And I wanted you all to be clear about what that looks like, because a lot of you might say, well, Colette, I remember Martha Stewart, and why did she have to go to jail then? Because she had some inside information, and then she used that to create wealth for what was going to be introduced in the market. Well, yes, you can't do that. That's not ethical. Okay? That's what this looks like. But the difference I want you to get educated on today, the difference between private and public companies specific to stock is that a private company may issue stock and have shareholders, but those shares don't trade on public exchanges, and they're not issued through an IPO, which stands for initial public offering, right? So you can be a part. That's how companies get valuations. So I don't know if you all watch Shark Tank. Remember when you watch Shark Tank, and after everyone goes through their presentation, and then the sharks will ask, well, what's your valuation? That means, what is your company worth? And then the presenters who are giving the pitch will say, oh, well, I believe it's at $1 million. And they'll say, well, how did you come to that? And you'll say, okay, well, guess what? We were able to sell this amount of product, and then I had this amount of investment from personal, family, and friends. And then if we forecast our growth from point A to point B year by year, with assuming that everything stays normal and we grow, plus get a little better, then that's how we're coming to $1 million. Right? So majority of the time, then they use those monies, those personal private monies, to be able to set the structure and to make it attractive and to show that the product or service is viable. And then they say, aha, I can open it up to the market. That's what's a IPO, initial public offering. So now I can go and introduce it to everyone else, and maybe everyone else will be as excited about my product or service, and I can get some money. So, but as a result, the private firms don't need to meet the Securities and Exchange Commission's filing requirements for public companies. That's the SEC. You have heard of the SEC. That stands for Securities and Exchange Commission. So private companies don't have to do that. However, when you're going public, that shows that a private company is offering an initial public offering. In the cannabis space, I know that you are familiar with High Times Magazine. High Times Magazine has been around. They've been a staple in the education of the cannabis space. And then they started doing events. And then they offered some opportunities over a year or so ago where you could invest in the company. And then they recently just bought out a slew of dispensaries a few weeks ago. And so now there's a conversation that they're putting together their IPO. So the initial public offering. And so that means that you get your paperwork together, and then you make an application. We're going to get there. So to be a publicly owned, traded entity. So the businesses have to go public to raise capital in hopes of expanding. And so venture capitalists, a lot of venture capitalists, and I know you all have heard the likes of a Jay-Z and a Leonardo DiCaprio, and even probably some politicians in the cannabis space, and Al Harrington, and I mean, everyone who's coming, Jim Jones, Snoop, Wiz Khalifa, rest in peace, Nipsey. had a strain. I mean, everyone, as venture capitalists, a lot of them are encouraging the IPO because that's their exit strategy. So I'm able to get my monies back of what I initially put into the company, plus some, because I'm able to get more people to buy into it, to get more money into the coffer. You all following me? I hope this is exciting for you. It's exciting for me to share it with you. And so, do you understand then the stock market? So investors buy and sell stock and other investments through the stock market. And so that's literally the space where investors connect to buy and sell investments. And most commonly for our purposes, we're just talking about stock. And those are shares of ownership in a public company. So the stock exchange, so you got that, stock market, you got stock, investing, stock market, stock exchange. And so that's a space, New York Stock Exchange, that facilitates the stock brokers to trade company stocks and other securities. And so, of course, as we shared before, the stock may be bought or sold only if it's listed on the exchange. So we're going to get there. With regards to the stock market, I want you to know that the term stock market also refers to one of the major stock market indexes. Did you know about that? So such as the Dow Jones Industrial Average, you heard of that, or S&P 500. Because it's hard to track every single stock, these indexes were established to be able to identify certain sections of the market and then to be able to follow their performance as viewed by what it looks like in the market. Okay? And so a lot of times you might see headlines that say the stock market has moved lower, that the stock market closed up on that day. And that just means, as we discussed before, that the stock market index has moved up or down, meaning that the stocks within that index have either gained or lost value as a whole. And so therefore, investors who are buying and selling those stocks, they hope to turn a profit through that movement. So the stock market, if the takeaway for the stock market, I want you all to know that the stock market allows people to decide which businesses should succeed. Let me give that to you again. That's the exciting part, again, about this conversation, that the stock market allows people to decide which businesses should succeed. And so now let me give you a little bit more information. I think we're going to have a part 2 next week of this, if that's okay with you, because time is just going. What they say, it flies when you're having a good time. Let me give you a little bit of information because now I want you to know what stock market index is, right? So there's some indexes that people go to be able to determine information. And specifically around the world, there's some powerful indicators for global and then country-specific economies. So I know in the U.S., you've heard of the S&P 500, Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the NASDAQ Composite. So those are 3 of the most broadly followed indexes, both from media and investors. But you probably didn't know that in addition to those 3, there's approximately about 5,000 others that make up the U.S. equity market. But people don't really know about that as well. So in those indexes, the U.S. market, there's a wide range of methodologies and categorizations that you can serve in that space. Now, a lot of times when the media talks to you, they most often report on the direction of those top 3 that we just talked about. Throughout the day, key news items. So when you hear them give you stock information, I want you to know where it comes from. So the S&P 500, what does that stand for? You've heard it. Standard & Poor's 500 Index, commonly known as the S&P. So this is an index with only 500 of the top companies in the U.S. Did you know that? That's why it's called Standard & Poor's 500. And then stocks are chosen for this index primarily by their capitalization. But the constituent committee also considers other factors, including liquidity, public float, sector classifications, financial viability, and their trading history. Now stay right there because I want to make sure that we're all educated. You might say, Colette, what is capitalization? Well, stock market capitalization is the amount of money it would cost for you to buy every single share of stock that a company has issued at the then current market price. I'm going to give you an example. So, for example, a company with 20 million shares selling at $50 a share would have a market cap of $1 billion. That's what it is. So they base it on what the capitalization is and then determine how much liquid you have, your moving room, what does that look like under the classification. For our purposes, we're going to delve more into cannabis. Cannabis is our classification and the like. And then, of course, if it's a new company, it doesn't have a substantial trading history, but we're going to get there. But the S&P 500 index represents about 80% of the total value of the U.S. stock market. 80%. So the majority of the information that you're giving that is making the decisions for you to invest your money represents 80% of the total value out of those 500 companies. And so as it was presented, the S&P, isn't that how branding is so important? Because you look at the S&P like it is just the gospel, but it gives a good indication on the movement of the U.S. market as a whole. I think we got time for one more. Let me give you the Dow Jones Industrial Average. You all heard of Dow Jones. The DJIA. It's one of the oldest and the most well-known and the most frequently used indexes in the world. But it only includes the stocks of about 30 of the largest and most influential companies in the United States. Isn't that interesting? So the S&P went from 500. Dow Jones is only 30. And it's price-weighted index, which is different. So they originally computed their totals by price per share of the stocks of each company in the index, and dividing that sum by the number of companies. However, unfortunately, the index is no longer this simple to calculate. And so over the years, stocks split, they spin off, and other events happen that have resulted in the changes in the divisor. And that divisor, like you underline, is a numerical value computed by the Dow Jones, used to calculate the level of the industrial average. Okay? And so the Dow Jones represents about a quarter of the value of the entire U.S. stock market, but the percentage change in the Dow should not be interpreted as a definite indication of the entire market. So that's just a component. And I believe I got time maybe for one more. No, I don't know. The Dow Jones also, let me tell you a little bit more about the Dow Jones. Okay, I got 3 minutes. The Dow Jones, it's known for listing the U.S. companies that are the best blue chip companies. I think this is going to be the best takeaways we stop because we're going to prepare for part 2 next week. The best blue chip companies. And so I want you all to say, you're like, okay, Colette, what are blue chip companies? Well, the blue chip companies are those nationally known companies that are well established and financially sound. Companies were these household names, and they've been identified because they're known to weather the downturns, and they operate profitably in the face of adverse economic conditions, and it helps to contribute to their long record of stable and reliable growth. And some of those companies, and you know the names, Coca-Cola, Disney, Intel, at a time, IBM. And so that's where we're going to stop today, I think, because, well, the next index is going to be the NASDAQ Composite. I'll pick that up on next week because we'll have a part 2, if that sounds okay with you, because I don't want us to get into just giving you stock and giving you information without you having an understanding and a foundation so you can feel rooted and grounded. So when we get into a space where we're having conversations about what stocks we should look at, how we should invest, whether you're a part of KannaBiz Investment Club or your own investment club or whatever that looks like for you, that you'll know. I don't want you to be in any space having a conversation with anyone where you don't understand the background of this thing, because that's how we're going to create wealth. And like Warren Buffett says, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. Let me tell it to you one more time again. If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. That is definitely not what's going to happen when we're tuning in and we're connecting on KannaBiz every Thursday. My ending quote for today is this: once you become fearless, life becomes limitless. However we're reaching you, just know that knowledge is power. Applied knowledge is power. I'm going to make sure that you have no fears so that you can live to your unlimited potential. Continue to make your moments matter. Make the day amazing. Look forward to seeing you bright and early next Thursday at 2 p.m. for more Cannabis with Colette Ramsey.
The views expressed on the preceding program does not necessarily reflect those of the Wade Broadcasting Corporation or the staff and management of WFBR. This is 1590 WFBR, Glen Burnie, Baltimore.
It's Thursday, May 28th, 2020, and from Dallas, Texas, this is World Missionary Evangelism on the Air. In just a few moments, WME's President John Cathcart will continue looking at the life of Paul, and today's lesson is called Gracious Correction. But first, would you listen to this important message? If you're not receiving the World Missionary Evangelism newsletter or magazine, you're missing out on the opportunity to learn a great deal more about World Missionary Evangelism, its people, its programs, and its outreach. The magazine and newsletter are absolutely free. All you have to do is request them. So if you, a member of your family or your friends or even a business, would like to find out more about World Missionary Evangelism, then why don't you call us toll free at 1-800-501-2851. That's 1-800-501-2851, and give us the address of where we should send World Missionary Evangelism's newsletter or magazine. Once again, it's absolutely free. To be placed on our World Missionary Evangelism mailing list, call 1-800-501-2851.
Well, we are considering, in an analytical fashion, the speech that Paul gave in the Areopagus at Athens to the philosophers. And while Paul seems to dwell only on points of agreement, yet the fact of the matter is, he rebukes in every direction their natural and intellectual self-complacency. Others, but not St. Paul, might have said the happy accident, which had called his attention to the inscription on the nameless altar, enabled him at once to claim them as at least partial sharers in the opinions which he was striving to enunciate. In other words, Paul does not find points of disagreement and attack them. He finds points of agreement and agrees with them. Now, his Epicurean auditors believed that the universe had resulted from a chance combination of atoms. But Paul tells them it was the unknown God who, by his word, had created the universe and all therein. They believed there were many gods, but that they sat far away, careless of mankind. Paul told them there was but one God, Lord of heaven and earth. And around the Athenians rose a circle of temples as purely beautiful as hand could make them. Yet there, under the shadow of their ornamental gate and of the great Parthenon, with all those shrines of 100 deities in full view, with their pillared vestibules and marble, he tells the multitude that this one God, who was one, not many, did not dwell in toil-wrought temples, but in the eternal temple of his own creation. But while Paul thus denies the polytheism of the multitude, his words tell with equal force against the pantheism of the Stoic and the practical atheism of the Epicureans. Now, this is really interesting. Paul has really denied polytheism in general, and the attitude of the Stoics, and the attitude of the Epicureans. And while he thus deconsecrated, as it were, the countless temples, the Stoics would go thoroughly with him. Oh yeah, the Stoics agree with that. And when he said that God did not need our ritualisms, the Epicureans would almost recognize the language of their own school. But on the other hand, Paul laid the axe to the root of their most cherished convictions when he added that matter was not eternal, and God was no personal abstraction, and providence no mere stream of tendency outside of us, which like a flow of atoms makes for us this or that he was at once the creator and preserver, the living and the loving Lord, Lord of the material universe, and Lord of all his children in the great family of man, and of all nations, alike Jew and Gentile, alike Greek and barbarians, which had received from his decrees the limits of their endurance of their domains. And in this one sentence, he also showed the falsity of all their self-sufficient pretensions and national self-glorification at the expense of others, as well as of all the ancient notions about the local limitation of special deities. Paul has really just laid the axe to the root of the tree of their philosophy. Well, the afflicted Jew, namely Paul, at whom they were scoffing, belonged to a race Paul is pointing out as dear to God as the beautiful Greek. And the barbarian was equally in his care, as from his throne God beheld all the dwellers on earth. And when Paul told them that God had given them the power to find him, and that they had but dimly groped after him in darkness, and when Paul clenched the truth that we are near and dear to him, and the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand, they would be prepared for the conclusion that all these cunning effigies, at which he pointed as he spoke, all these carved and molten images were not and could not be semblances of God, and ought not to be worshipped, were they even as venerable as the famous heaven-fallen image of their patron goddess, or as glorious as the statues on which Phidias expended his best genius, and Athens her richest gifts. And so Paul has spoken to them, and I'm quite sure it sounded good, but some of the Athenians are starting to say, did he just put us down? Did he just say what I think he said? It sounded good, but I think he just put us down. Well, by this method, and with a considerateness which avoided all offense, and a power of reasoning and eloquence to which they could not be indifferent, he had demonstrated the ignorance of his listeners, mainly by contrasting them with the counter-truths which it was his mission to announce. But lest the mere demonstration of error should end only in indifference or despair, that is, in we don't care or what can we do, he desired to teach the Stoic to substitute sympathy for apathy and liberality for pride, and the confession of a weakness that relied on God for the assertion of self-independence which denied all need of him. And Paul desired to lead the Epicurean to prefer spiritual peace to sensual pleasure, and a living Saviour to distant and indifferent gods. And Paul proceeded, therefore, to tell them that during the long centuries of their history, that's the history of Greece, God had overlooked or condoned this ignorance. The words in the King James are, in times past, God winked at this. But Paul is saying, now the kingdom of heaven has come to them. Now God called on them for repentance. Now the day of judgment was proclaimed, a day in which the world should be judged in righteousness by one whom God had appointed to do so, even by that Jesus, to whose work God had set his seal by raising him from the dead.
The coronavirus has done more than make over 1 million people sick, while killing hundreds of thousands of others. It has also exposed us to the fragility of the economy across the globe. This pandemic, which has closed businesses, created chaos even in America, and has filled hospitals to overflowing in large cities and small towns. It has also pointed out something that we at World Missionary Evangelism have been explaining for decades. large portions of the world's population really do live on the edge between life and death. For those who are the poorest of the poor, insecurity is a constant companion, and hope is a rare visitor. WME's disaster relief program was constructed to save lives while also showing grace and mercy. It was designed to help those who had nowhere to turn. In many cases, especially with the very old and the very young, we are their only chance to latch on to a lifeline of security and hope. The fact is, without disaster relief, many of those would perish. Today, in a year of a pandemic like we have not seen since 1918, WME's disaster relief mission is needed more than ever. To give a gift of $100 or more to WME's disaster relief mission, call us toll-free at 1-800-501-2851. That's 1-800-501-2851. Or, if you're living outside the United States, use this line, 1-214-942-1678. There is no time to waste. Funds and help are needed now. Please help us reach others through WME's disaster relief missions. With all the bad news you've been hearing this year, with all the death and destruction all around us, perhaps it's time that we focus on Christ in a new way here in May. And that's by reading about the joy to the world that came when Christ was born. In the book we're giving away in May are 25 readings by John Piper, looking forward to Christmas. So let's expand our understanding of the birth of Christ and place it in the summer where we can even focus on it more. If you would like to receive the book Joy to the World, simply write to us and request our May offer at this address: WME, Post Office Box 660800. That's 660800, Dallas, Texas 75266. Now might just be the perfect time for you to read and think about Christmas.
I'd like to ask a favor. Whenever you write or email World Missionary Evangelism, would you please include the call letters of the radio station where you listen to our broadcasts?
It is through your faithfulness, prayers, and generous letters that make possible this great world outreach for Christ. Be sure to include your prayer request in your letter, and remember the mailing address is WME, Post Office Box 660800. Remember, that's 660800, Dallas, Texas 75266. Our toll-free number for gifts using your MasterCard, Visa, Discover Card, or American Express card is 1-800-501-2851. That's 1-800-501-2851. For our listeners in Canada, our address is WME Post Office Box 6088. That's 6088, Fort St. John, British Columbia, V1J 4H6. Our home on the web is found at WME.org.
WFBR